Hey, vinyl community, it's Doodah Dave. Welcome to everyone, and Happy New Year and Lashana Tova. If you celebrate the new year, Happy New Year. And I am doing today what Chris at the Long Cut, his challenge on the top 10 albums that I spin. Now, those that you've known me, I'm not always on time, and it's hard for me to keep within boundaries sometimes. I don't know, does that make me ADHD? I guess I'm a mental health professional. I should know these things. Anyway, I digress. So I came up with not 10, not 11, not 12, not 13, but 14. So 10 and 4 honorable mentions. Now, I broke them down being, I do have some analytical skills in my OCD. So I broke them down alphabetically. And I want to follow this up with, just as a precursor, and I'm giving a long intro here, with 10 of my favorite female artists and 10 records that I don't listen to. I think that would be very interesting. Although I did break out my Mamas and the Papas, gotten some Peter, Paul, and Mary, and some pretty obscure stuff. So let's kick it off. I'm going to go alphabetically. I looked, and paring it down, I only have one live album, but it's a goodie. Yep, Fillmore East, Allman Brothers. Many people consider it to be the greatest live album ever recorded. You got the band on the cover, Dickie, Barry, Greg, Butch is at the end. I have to do it this way. Sorry. J-Mo, who's a drummer, Dwayne Allman, Greg Allman, Dickie Betts, the great bass player Barry Oakley, who passed away, and Butch Trucks. Of all of these people currently living, there's only J-Mo and Dickie Betts, fortunately. 1971 at the Fillmore East, Statesboro Blues, Done Somebody Wrong, Stormy Monday, You Don't Love Me, Whole Second Side, Hot Lana, a great burner of an instrumental, several instrumentals on this, Memory of Elizabeth Reed, and Hot Lana, actually the whole side 3, I didn't realize is all instrumental, and then Whipping Post takes up side 4. Tour de Force, they got Tom Doucette on harp, and all the roadies on the back. Interestingly enough, some tidbit, many people know this, on Capricorn Records, by the way, great Phil Walden. The Allmans settled in Macon after Otis died. Otis died in the plane crash, I believe in 67. So the Allmans were formed in 69. So there was a real gap in Macon. Phil Walden, who founded Capricorn Records, had built a studio there, kind of akin to the famous Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, where Dwayne had been doing studio work and needed a band, and the Allmans filled that bill, and Southern Rock was born. Little bit of an oversimplification on the story, but that's pretty much it. The cover pictures and the roadies on the back, I'm not going to go through Callahan and Twigs and Red Dog and all that. But pretty cool. They put their roadies on the back cover. Not too many bands did that, and it showed what a live band and a true live album it was. But a lot of people think this was shot in New York City. It was not. It was shot in Macon, and the story was that they couldn't get the right vibe for the album, and old Dwayne there went down the street to cops. If you notice, his hands are kind of covered. He's got some illicit substance there, and they're all cracking up. So that's the story of the cover. Allman Brothers. Now we go to a band everybody's probably heard of, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's. Not too much needs to be said about this that hasn't been said. It's the an iconic album by an iconic band. It was 67. They took on a different persona, the Billy Shears and the Sgt. Pepper and all that. And I'll show you the inside. Didn't really show the inside from the almonds. I gotta remember to show the almond and the labels. Just a great album. Fixing a Hole. It's Getting Better. Day in the Life of Chord. Of course, Trouble. Lovely Rita. This is my 67 copy, and show you all with the rainbow capital. The American press. And I'll show you something that I have with this that I don't know if they do. Oh, this is really funny. I don't know if you can see this. It says, welcome the Rolling Stones down in the corner there. So we'll be hearing from them. I might do them next. Look at this. This is really cool. I'm really proud that I have that and it's still intact. Pretty cool, right? So that's 1967, Capitol, the Beatles, taking it all to a different level. Psychedelia, vaudeville. They got Dylan on the cover here. They have Aleister Crowley on here. Brando. Of course, them when they were younger. Them is, I guess this is Muhammad Ali. You can pull it up online and see all the people there. Mae West, I think. All right. I'll show you the inside of the Allman Brothers. I'm going to switch to the Rolling Stones. I'm going to switch it up. These are really cool pictures from the Fillmore with that red light. Show you that. The photography on the Allman Brothers album is really, really good. Jim Marshall. If you ever see Derek Trucks, who's, got a great band with his wife, Susan, he often wears Jim Marshall t-shirts. I'm going to switch to for number 3. Rolling Stones. I was talking to my son about this. Now, this was a greatest hits and I was reading a little bit how it came about because it wasn't on Apple Music. Great backside. Through a Glass Darkly, a biblical quote, and you can see there Through a Glass. It was a greatest hits album they put out after Beggar's Banquet and had the first rock version of Honky Tonk Women. The first country honk, of course, was on. That actually came after this, right? Because it was on Let It Bleed. You got Paint It Black. This is the American version now. 1969, Ruby Tuesday, She's a Rainbow, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Mother's Little Helper, Let's Spend the Night Together, Honky Tonk Women on the second side, Dandelion, 2,000 Light Years from Home, Have You Seen Your Mother Standing in the Shadow, and Street Fightin' Man. So that's about as good of a one-disc greatest hits that you're going to get. And they wanted to put something out after Brian died. Of course, he was on the cover, and then the smash in the back, so it was kind of a tribute to him. It has that cool octagonal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I got it right. Octagonal. All right, we'll go back to Alphabetized with the Brits. This album. And I wanted to pick an Eric Clapton, and I wanted to pick a Steve Winwood. Eric Clapton's been in so many great bands. Cream, of course. Derek and the Dominoes. With Delaney and Bonnie prior to that, and his own bands and own solo stuff. But this band was great, and I did not want to get blocked on YouTube, so I covered up the cover. I got this at my wonderful Marquee Records in my favorite record store in Westchester, which is at the Tarrytown Music Hall. I'll put a link down below on that. Steve Winwood, Rick Gretsch on bass, replaced Jack Bruce, of course, and Ginger Baker on the drums from Cream. So you had 2/3 of Cream. You had the driving force and main leader of Traffic. And then Rick Gretsch, that was in a band called Family, does a nice job holding down the bass. Had to Cry Today. These albums that I've picked, for me, there's not a bad song on here. Had to Cry Today, Can't Find My Way Home, Well, All Right. The Buddy Holly song, Presence of the Lord, a Clapton ballad, Sea of Joy, which I love, which is kind of a psychedelic, rave up, and Do It You Like. Of course, you get the Ginger Baker drum solo. So everything on RSO, I think this came out in 1969, I'm thinking. Blind Faith. I'll show you the album. It's on RSO, Robert Stigwood organization. I love Robert Stigwood. Only Robert Stigwood would be the manager for Eric Clapton, Blind Faith, and the Bee Gees. That's about as far, and Yvonne Elliman, about as far away as you could possibly. Oh, and Chris Blackwell from Island. he has a credit on here, I guess, being, Stevie Island took over from managing Traffic, Island Records. Okay, Chris Blackwell, and he moved a lot of his studio stuff to Jamaica. Started the whole Caribbean thing. Moving right along, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Not much need to be seen. See, this one's pretty worn out. Another 1969er. You got Graham Nash, Stephen Stills, and David Crosby. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Of course, they put themselves backwards on the cover. See, that's something I would do. You got the gold record sticker there. You got the drummer, Dallas Taylor, peeking out of the back. The old house. I think that was a house they found on Sunset or somewhere around Sunset. And here they are at Sunset. Probably someplace cooler, maybe up in the mountains. And this album, Guinevere, A Long Time Gone. Oh my gosh, I've got a sleeve from Yes in here. Yes, I did not put Yes in my top 10. So, quite Sweet Judy. Blue Eyes, of course. Getting it confused with Deja Vu. Marrakesh, Guinevere. You Don't Have to Cry, Pre-Road Downs. Again, not a bad song on here for my money. Wooden Ships, Lady of the Island, Helplessly Hoping. 49 Bye-Byes. Stills really held down a lot of the bass and the organ stuff in this. Crosby and Nash did the rhythm and the harmonies, of course. Some of the leads, wrote some of the songs. And it's just a perfect album. What can you say? The performance at Woodstock. You've got the drawings, which I would think was probably by Joni Mitchell. They look Joni Mitchell-esque, but I could be wrong. I love Pre-Road Downs. A couple of lyrics. I don't want this video to run. It's already 12 minutes. Don't run. The time approaches. Hotels and midnight coaches. Be sure to hide the roaches. It was 69. I love this album. I played it out, and when Deja Vu came out, we couldn't wait to get that, and it proved to be a super group. Okay, moving right along, a little jazz, or a lot of jazz. Milestones, Miles Davis. Don't know the year on this. I should. But the lineup is Cannonball Adderley on alto, John Coltrane. It was tenor before he played. I don't think he plays any soprano on this. Red Garland on piano. Up there in my estimation with Bill Evans and McCoy Tyner as keyboard players. And you got, after that, Joe Zawinul, Chick Corea, and Herbie Hancock. Miles was known to pick some pretty high-powered keyboard players. Garland's fantastic. PC, the wonderful Paul Chambers on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums. Of course, Coltrane will go on and have Jimmy Garrison on bass and Elvin Jones on drums. But this band is smoking. Dr. Jekyll, Sid's Ahead, 2-bass hit. Miles, Billy Boy, and the Thelonious Monk, 10 minutes, clocking at 10 minutes and 42 straight, no chaser. Love this. Love this album. This is a go-to, and I have quite a few Miles albums. Billy Boy was traditional. I guess Jackie McLean wrote Dr. Jekyll. I didn't know that. Oh, and Gillespie on two, and John Lewis from the Modern Jazz Quartet wrote 2-bass hits. So you got a couple covers on here, cover and a traditional, and they just, stretch out. They swing. They do that Miles thing. Great cover of Miles. I want to say this is, I don't want to say the year. I don't have the year. I should have done my homework on that. Early 60s, maybe 61. Now, I wanted to do one from each of these artists, and this seemed to be the perfect fit that covered Bob Dylan at the time he was doing John Wesley Harding and later New Morning in that period. New Morning came out in 70, but Self-Portrait, all that great acoustic stuff after the motorcycle accident. And the band, I was almost going to do Moondog Matinee. Other people have done the other ones. I've done the second band album. This is just a fantastic album of Bob Dylan and a fantastic album of the band. It's a little rough because it was recorded in Big Pink, a band's house up in Saugerties, in the basement on a reel-to-reel. It was show the cover. It was a bootleg for a long period of time. When I'm running low, I need to move through these a little bit quicker. Bob Dylan, Robbie Robertson, Richard Manuel, Rick Danko, Garth Hudson, and Lee Von Helm. From the basement of Big Ping in West Saugerties, New York, 1967. Some highlights: Yazoo Street Scandal, Going to Acapulco, Bessie Smith, Apple Suckling Tree, Tears of Rage, Too Much of Nothing, Ain't No More Kane, Crash on the Levee, Tiny Montgomery, Nothing Was Delivered, This Wheel's on Fire. So you got band songs on here, you got Dylan songs on here, and you got both, and they're jamming. Really, really, really great stuff. And there they are in the basement with a lot of their compadres. Freaky Americana stuff. Eagles on the Border. Love this album. I had a really hard time picking at Eagles. I've done Hotel California. I was thinking about the first album, but this has Bernie and Don Felder on it. It's pre-Joe Walsh, but it really rocks. I mean, Already Gone, Midnight Flyer. It has terrific banjo from Bernie, too, because Bernie's back from the Flying Burrito Brothers. It's got James Dean. It's got Old 55, a Tom Waits song, so a little nod to Tom Waits on here. Best of My Love. Just great. Henley, Fry, Leadon, Randy Meisner before Timothy B. Schmidt. And late arrival Don Felder on electric guitar. It has everything. It has country, it has acoustic, it has rock, it has kind of Old 55, I don't know what you call Tom Waits, folk blues. Bill Seismic, their longtime producer and engineer, 1974. Love this album. Loved it for a long time. It's the first Eagles album I had on vinyl. Okay, moving right along, Grateful Dead. Everybody knows I'm a big Grateful Dead fan. This is 1973's Wake of the Flood. It was the 50th anniversary this year. They're doing a big release. Shout out to them. I'll try to put a link to that as well. The Grateful Dead site, Grateful Dead Records. This has so many great songs. I mean, pretty much everything on here was done in concert for many, many years. Here Comes Sunshine, Eyes of the World, of course. Which is my favorite Grateful Dead song, Weather Report, all three parts, Mississippi Half Step, Road Jimmy, Stella Blue, and then Let Me Sing Your Blues Away, which was Keith Godshaw, who this was his first studio album with the band. You got the crow on there on the label. This was their first their first record, Grateful Dead record on their own record album, Grateful Dead Records. You can see it's a cutout. So, and in the clouds, you see the clouds there. There's a hidden skull. So that's that fantastic album. I love it. Vassar Clements does the fiddle. And you have Martine, I think it's pronounced, Merck Griffin cover. Very biblical. Hunter was going through a lot of biblical stuff at that time. Just a great album for a Studio Dead album. I love it. I saw them first in 73, so that was their first studio album. Going to move through this because it's getting long. Axis Boulder's Glove. This is my favorite Jimmy album. I'm just very attached to it. It was the follow-up to Are You Experienced? In between Electric Ladyland that I know a lot of people picked in their top 10, but I just love this album. She's So Fine, Little Miss Lover. The 6 was a 9. Little Wing, probably my favorite, along with Angel, my favorite Jimmy ballad. Spanish Castle Magic, Castles Made of Sand, One Rainy Wish. I love the way this album flows. I love the interplay and the experience. I love Jimmy with the experience with Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding. Everybody knows Noel Redding was a guitar player before a bass player. It's got that trippy kind of Indian cover, which Jimmy wasn't too crazy about, I heard, but still cool. All right, moving right along. Zepp 3. I had to pick a Zepp. I didn't pick 2. I didn't pick 4. I didn't pick 1. I picked 3. I love 3. Again, I saw them at this time. I mean, some of these albums that I spin, it's because I saw these artists at the time. These albums were new or right before they came out, so they had special significance for me. But Immigrant Song, Since I've Been Loving You, Tangerine, Gallows Pole, Brawn Out of Your Stomp, Celebration Day, Out on the Tiles. I mean, there's not a cropper, as the Brits would say, on here. Great cover. You know, I got Jimmy here. You can spin it. It's got a spinning wheel inside of it. See that? Very psychedelic for the time. And the band on the back. Jimmy Page, Plant, John Paul Jones, and Bonzo, John Bonham on drums. Moving right along, we're into I think that was 10 for honorable mention. This is really the cover, right? Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd. One of the things I like about these bands is when they have a really iconic album, Europe 72, American Beauty. Look at the albums before and after that. So Wake of the Flood was the first album after Europe 72. This was the first album after Dark Side of the Moon. And I don't think it gets enough love. It gets love, but I don't think it gets enough love. This was an audiophile pressing. My daughter Sherry and my son Dylan got me for Christmas a few years back, and it's fantastic. It really, really sounds great. Have a Cigar, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which I listened to today. Welcome to the Machine. It's just, it holds together as well, in my opinion, as Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, then that's, I won't say better, but as well. Great artwork. Again, there's posters in here. I won't go through that for the sake of time. Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. One of my favorite bands, along with the Grateful Dead, as people also know, is Steely Dan, that have gotten a lot of love recently. Asia, 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 Can't Buy a Thrill, Can't Buy a Thrill, Countdown to Ecstasy, and Pretzel Logic. I don't hear anybody talking about Katy Lied now. Analog Productions haven't released this one yet, but this is a fantastic album. I remember listening to Chain Lightning on some L100s in college, and it just blew me away. It's just a very well mastered album, recorded album. The meticulousness of the Dan. Again, this is before my favorite Steely Dan album, which was Royal Scam. I love Kid Charlemagne because it's about Owsley. Owsley's connected to the dead. You know, sue me. Bad Sneakers, Rose Darling, Daddy Don't Live in That New York City No More. Dr. Wu with the Phil Woods. Coffee just fell all over my records. I think it's time to wrap up. All right. One more. Can't make this stuff up, folks. Who's next? Baba O'Reilly, Won't Get Fooled Again, Going Mobile, Behind Blue Eyes. Pete just did a great job on this. Fantastic, and love him. I'm going to go clean up my coffee, let you guys go. This went very, very long. Love you. Keep spinning. Doodah Dave, signing out.